Hey guys, how about we talk about type 1 and type 2 error? Yes, you heard me, type 1 and type 2 error. Let's do it. So I'll do my best to simplify the concepts of type 1 and type 2 error. I know they're confusing and I had to read this and try to understand them multiple times. So yeah, I hope you find this helpful. So yeah, let's start. So usually when we have when we have a situation where we're trying to compare two groups, we have one of these two situations. So either the null hypothesis is true, meaning there is no difference between these two groups. For example, if you're trying to compare the birth weight of two groups, for example, treatment group and the control group, just for instance. And the other option is if the null hypothesis is false, meaning there is actually a difference between these two groups. Okay, so assuming that one of these situations is true, our test is trying to conclude one of these two conclusions, right? So we either conclude by our test that the null hypothesis is true, or we conclude that the null hypothesis is false. And by the way, the null hypothesis in statistics, this is the notation for the null hypothesis. Okay, so the test we're using, it could be test statistics, and we have many test statistics in epidemiology trying to test the null hypothesis. Okay, for example, z-testing, chi-square testing. We have like four of the options, okay, to conclude. So the first one is if our test concludes that the null hypothesis is false. Okay, so we conclude that the null hypothesis is false, but as a matter of fact it's a true. This is what we call type 1 error. For example, if the two groups are not different in terms of their birth weight, okay, but actually we're concluding differently that the birth weight of these two groups is different. So this is what we call type 1 error. Or we can say this is the false positivity of the test. Okay, so that's an error we're making, because actually the null hypothesis is true, but we're concluding that it's false, and this is what we call type 1 error. In statistics it's called alpha, or the significance level. Okay, the other option is our test concludes that the null hypothesis is actually true, and as a matter of fact it's actually true, so this is a correct conclusion, so this is a good thing. Okay, and please note that these two complement each other, so this is alpha or significance level, and this is 1 minus alpha. Okay, now on the other hand, if the null hypothesis is false and we conclude that it's a true, okay, so null hypothesis is false and our conclusion is that it's actually true. For example, let's say the birth weight of the two groups we're trying to compare is different. Okay, so the null hypothesis is false, but we're saying by the test we just did or performed, we're saying that actually there is no difference between these two groups. And this is what we call type 2 error, or the false negativity of the test, and this is what we call beta. Okay, and the last option is if the null hypothesis is false and we conclude correctly that it is false, this is very good, very powerful, and this is the power of the study. Okay, this is a correct conclusion. This is, if this is beta, this is 1 minus beta, which is the power of the test. Okay, usually it's if anything, or usually the power should be more than 80%. Okay, the power, which is 1 minus beta, the alpha, They're all related to the sample size. Of course, not only sample size, but sample size plays a huge role in that. So if you want to increase the power of your test, you have to recruit more and more people to increase your sample size. Okay, this is usually 80%, the power at least, of course, and the significance level is alpha. Okay, and usually this is preset during the study design. So again, please refer to this table again and again, and review it, look at it, think about it, and please comment if you have any question. I hope that was helpful, and yeah, thank you for watching.